Okay, we're ready. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Regional Council meeting. I would like to start the meeting by acknowledging that we're on the traditional territory of the Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Prophet River First Nation. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually. It's being streamed and recorded. Are there any council additions to tonight's meeting? Staff, any additions? No, thank you. This is the public comment period. Is there any public that would like to speak to any agenda item tonight, please? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are you tonight?
Fine, thank you very much. Welcome, Bev.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the correspondence from Urs Schildknecht from the Northern Rockies Lodge. The Chamber has wanted to let you know that the Chamber has also initiated a conversation with BC Hydro and the staff at the municipality to discuss the priority of EV charging stations over resident access to BC Hydro. You know, just thinking in terms of the BC Climate Action Plan, getting remote residents access to the grid should take priority. In addition to not having access to the grid, remote residents and businesses are additionally burdened with the carbon tax on top of the fuel tax cost to provide all of their own power generation. If we're going to see BC Hydro investing in power generation for EV stations along the highway, this may be a good time to reopen that conversation around resident access. And the Chamber would request Regional Council support rural residents in attaining access to BC hydropower. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other requests to speak before council on anything that's on the agenda tonight? Seeing none. Adoption of the agenda is in order, please. Moved by Councillor Soul, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. There are 6 sets of minutes there to adopt. If somebody would like to move by Councillor Going that we adopt those 6 sets of minutes, second by Councillor Andrews. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? It's carried. Is there any business arising from any of those minutes? The council? Seeing none, staff.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just at the last meeting, a request, we were requested to investigate the parade of lights and what options are maybe for this year, and we were able to confirm that the individual that puts off David, who puts off the parade of lights, is still in the community and intends to run the process similar to the previous 2 years.
That's great.
Do you need anything from council to ensure the NRM's participation in the parade as we have done in the past year? The fire truck and graders or airport big yellow trucky things?
No, we're okay. We're prepared. You
Okay.
can proceed. It's been an annual tradition.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other business arising? Seeing none, then we'll move to reports. There's an addition in your package, 7.1, the administration report for the structural protection unit potential grant. So that's report number 4823. Staff wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I can speak to this one.
Please.
The UBCM Community Emergency Protection Fund grant has opened for their composite fire department's equipment and training stream. So this year, in conjunction and conversation with Northern Rockies Fire Rescue and BC Wildfire, we would like to submit an application to fund to start us accumulating a structural protection unit. So a structural protection unit, and I've attached pictures to the admin report. The whole, when we say SPU or structural protection unit, we do mean the full thing. The trailer, it's a 22-foot long trailer. It holds hoses, pumps, nozzles, and sprinklers enough to protect up to 50 structures, depending upon the structure size. So that is an SPU, and there's a picture of an SPU in there. The grant that we're looking to apply for will allow us to accumulate that unit in phases. So, because that full unit is about $220,000 for trailer and all of the contents, if you were to buy one fully outfitted. So the grant allows us to purchase those in phases. Phase one is about $60,000. The grant only covers $30,000 of costs. So we are looking for council endorsement of the pursuit of the acquisition of a full structural production unit, as well as this year's activities for $60,000 to purchase phase one of the equipment that's inside. It won't get us the trailer, but it will get us enough equipment inside that we can protect about 10 structures should we need to. So given the timing, we're unfortunately not within the budget cycle that we would normally put this kind of request through. In conversations with Director of Finance Friarchuk, he said we could expense the extra $30,000 from general surplus without impacting next year's taxes.
Thank you. Questions? I have a question. Where are you going to store everything in the meantime if you don't have the trailer first?
Fire does have some storage available because it's not going to be a ton. It's about an extra 30 hoses, some nozzles, and some sprinklers. So it's not a ton of equipment. And there's only 2 Mark III pumps, which aren't enormous, but
Right. So that will all be set aside unless it needs to be used, and then it'll just be put in a pickup truck and taken out to wherever they set
taken
it
out
up.
to wherever it needs to be deployed. And this year, BC Wildfire and our fire department are also going to start the training to become structural protection endorsed so that they can actually deploy the structural protection unit. So it's good that we have the equipment so that they can actually do that joint training together.
Right. And we can protect log cabins. It's a sore spot with me.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, okay, so, but are we looking at 50-cent dollars then really for the whole 220,000?
No, we're looking at 50-cent dollars for the first 30,000. Or for the first $60,000. If we were to pursue next year, we could pursue the same grant to get another $30,000. I have not found a grant yet that will cover the whole 220
Right.
in one fell swoop.
So by the time this thing's finished, we will be spending at least $110,000
Yes.
or more.
And that would take
If-
us 4 years to get there. My intention is to submit a capital request for the 2024 budget season for the rest of the cost to get a full structural protection unit trailer.
So then really you're looking at $30,000 off the 220.
Yeah, about 190.
The rest you're gonna ask us for later.
Yep.
Okay, so there might not be an opportunity to get 50 cents for the whole project. Councilor Gilman.
So given the fire season that we have just endured and hopefully we don't have such another season next year, but we absolutely could. I would absolutely entertain the notion to purchase the full type 2 SPU unit now, because then we will have it. We can rent it out if it need be, so we can recoup some of the dollars. Then it just doesn't make sense to me to go ahead and purchase 30 hoses now and then wait for the budget season 2024 where we're gonna purchase more and then, well, you know what I mean? Let's just get it now. We can protect up to 50 structures if we need to. And I just think that this is something that we should have in our arsenal to fight these fires.
In fact, I don't disagree with that. But I think what you're asking for is to apply for this grant, which will give us 30,000 towards.
It would
this,
give us $30,000 towards the 220, because
Which-
it is the exact same equipment, whether we buy $60,000 worth it or $220,000.
Right.
So
Yeah, so I just want to confirm that I'm suggesting that we buy the $220,000 worth. And if you want to apply for a $30,000 grant, then I will fully support that.
It's not in the budget though, is it?
I-
None of it's in the budget. So you're recommending that we take out $190,000 from
general. surplus.
general surplus.
Yeah, wherever it needs to come out of, Trevor. That's what I'm suggesting, yes.
Trevor, can you come to the table? Thank you. In your review of the of this report, to make the recommendation for the 30, is there enough? Is there enough money, I guess, in that reserve account, or would it impact the reserve account to take 190,000 instead of 30,000?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. I didn't consider it to that extent. So when we first talked about the 30,000, that was the amount that I was considering. I think it would be prudent for me to consider it in more depth before I would say to go for the 190,000.
From that particular reserve account? Okay,
That's correct, yes.
go ahead.
So the deadline for the grant is up to 20th. If councils because I've heard kind of two different conversations. One was purchase now versus,
I'm not opposed to purchasing now. I'm just,
but is it apply for the grant first? Because it's not retroactive, the grant would be, I'm assuming,
No,
right?
No, the grant is not retroactive, and the separate decision to purchase an entire trailer is separate from the grant application. I will put in the grant application no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, so if council's in favor of the grant application, we could bring information back to the next meeting of council, which is specific to the funds for the full amount. If
We know what the delivery time is for a complete unit?
I don't know. We spoke with the representative from Wasp Wildfire at UBCM. The trailer was actually parked in the back corner of the convention floor. Yeah, I know I can definitely reach out and get that in for next council meeting.
Okay. Can we deal with the grant application now and then purchase at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Can you put the purchase of this, a report on the next council meeting? Okay, on the grant. Can I have a recommendation? Councilor Gurley?
Yeah, I'd make a motion in support of the proposed activities. A grant application be submitted to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities 2023 Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Volunteer and Composite Fire Departments Equipment and Training Grant to fund up to $30,000 of eligible costs towards the purchase of Fire Smart Structural Protection Unit equipment, and further that staff provide overall grant management and additional project expenses to maximum of $30,000 to be expensed from general surplus.
Moved by Councilor Gurley, second by Councilor Enoch. Is there any further discussion? I think Councilor Souls?
Yeah, I'd just like to say this is actually great to get equipment. There's more to fighting fires than having equipment and so on. And one of them, I just want to relay a story that I heard at the UBCM from one of the regional directors in the province who notice how that fires don't normally start in town. They creep their way into town from the bush, from the interface area. And so it's in the rural areas that are outside of our communities is where the initial firefighting usually happens. And there was a novel presentation that, a novel idea that she'd come up with. It's a part of rural BC where a lot of the rural residents didn't feel very comfortable to go and apply for a grant to get a WASP sprinkler system for their housing. And so she pulled a grant together through their regional district of $45,000 that was conditional to give WASP units to residents on the outside of town, and there were small areas, conditional to them taking the WASP training, the Fire Smart training. And it was very fascinating because she said it was that process had complete uptake, like that 45 grand was completely utilized, and about I don't remember the number, there was quite a few rural residents that also had this. So I brought this up because I love the look of that trailer. I'd love to have all those sprinklers, one on my log barn and on my, all these sprinklers, it's a great idea. It takes, there's more to it than just seeing the equipment working, and it takes quite a bit, but I am in favor of doing this. I just wanted to add that into the discussion of the sprinkler system.
Thank you. Is there any other discussions? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rychuk. 7.2 Administration Report 4923 Andy Bailey Regional Park and Campground Improvement. We had a very good report made to us at the Committee of the Whole meeting. This report comes to us from staff. I think there's probably some discussion at the Committee of the Whole meeting that wasn't thought about when this staff report was put together. But Mr. Roberts, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for the wonderful discussion at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So as outlined in this report, we are looking to bring some of this to tender. And from the discussion, I feel that our next step should be that we finalize the reporting with Lee's, having those detailed breakdowns and set up a stage or optional design so that we can report that back to council for your input. And then in the meantime, hoping that we can have your support as we continue to search for additional grants and grant funding so that we can try and cover as much of this project with grant funding as we can.
So would you consider that option 2 is really what we're talking about in the report? Option 1 is recommended, but option 2, I think is where we got to in the Committee of the Whole. So just looking for staff's input on that.
Yeah, that sounds more in line of what my impression was from the Committee of the Whole meeting that we
Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, that we have the grant funding secured for the first portion of it, and then we'll continue to search for some grant funding as well as lay out the design where the additional part can be done at a later date or in conjunction with, depending on the funding we're elements.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Councilor Gerwin.
Yeah, I think what you said made sense, except for like option 2 says to present items outside of this scope as a capital request in 2024. So I would like that not to be, because we did have some talk about other grant opportunities, community, what was it? Growth fund or
The
something.
Growing
that-
Communities Fund.
Yeah, Growing Communities Fund that we might access as well. So I don't think that it should be just left there as a capital request in 2024.
Other funding options?
Yeah.
No. Or other funding options, does that work? So I'll read it. That council support the portion of Andy Bailey Regional Park Improvement Project that is covered by the BC Destination Development Grant and direct staff to present items outside of this scope for further funding options. I didn't write the word funding in there. Could I have a mover for that, please? Moved by Councilor Enoch, second by Councilor Andrews. Is there any further discussion? I think it was a very good discussion that we had. I think the 95% that they've got to is good, you know, from accessibility perspective. I like the tenting options, you know, I like the food security boxes. So I really like what I saw. Councilor Solz?
Yeah, I think just one idea that is not necessarily to embrace, but when we're trying to move this tender as soon as possible, of course, because that gets us into the zone for getting it done in 2024. And sometimes when you tender with additional work, you might find that the contractor, if we presented it from an RFP or something like that, has ways of bringing that second part in and giving a lower cost to it because it's not a separate deal. That anyway, just I support it if I'd like it if we'd have a variety of approaches to trying to figure out a way to get that second funding covered both from granting and from the potential of doing it through the contracting route.
Yeah. Almost like doing it as extras that you set them aside and they bid on the extras sort of separately and you can pick them or choose them as options, right? Yeah. At least then you get a cost, right, of what they might expose. But
Yeah, what we've done in the past is we'll have we've had the baseline work, then we've had optional work.
yeah,
As not guaranteed that we would proceed with it,
Award it.
but at least get costing. You look at potentially having a discussion around taking advantage of efficiencies and whatnot also when you look at molding and so forth. So that's one of the options we talk about from our procurement process as part of the tender.
good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
That brings us to item 7.3, which is Administration Report 5023, Northern Development Initiative Trust Grant for secondary bleacher seating. You're gonna
Hello?
speak to that as well?
Yes, sorry, this one's me again.
I was
Uh,
expecting to see Harvey sitting there.
No, I told him I was taking this one. too.
Okay, good.
So with this one, we put together this report. What we're looking for is to increase the number of seating and the seating viability in the secondary arena. Currently, the secondary arena has 2 sets of mobile bleachers that we put in there. The arena really wasn't designed for having seating in there for viewing. It was meant to be a practice rink and all the games would occur on primary rink. But in practice since then, what we've seen is that that rink does get used pretty regularly as people try to optimize the timing where especially for traveling teams, where they come up, where they can have games occurring on both sides and shorten the windows, get people home easier and on time. So it has shown that there has been some issues with the seating over there, especially, and I believe minor hockey may have even spoke to you guys earlier in the year with regards to viewing of the score clock from one of the sets of bleachers, where with the building design, it's very difficult to see. And then with that, there's some other issues as well. So the seating in there currently is 80 people. Those bleachers are designed for 40 per set, so 80 or 40 on each corner. And then with this proposal, we reached out, we were able to increase that up to 151 with the current seating there. It will require turning of the stairs where the old timers come down. Without that, we're only able to bring the seating up to about 100. So we felt that with that and the additional cost of that, it made sense to add that seating. And then we're looking at exploring with some of our local contractors, availability, add some heating and things like that in there to increase the patron comfort, because that's been another issue that's been brought up to us as well. We have some radiant heaters up in the upper space, which we could still utilize, but that rink as a whole is pretty cold. So people would really appreciate having some additional heat there, and that's one of our goals, is to be able to increase the patron comfort as well as the viewability of the game.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Can you explain to me the process you sort of went through to create this design? Who did you speak to? Like, was minor hockey involved? Figure Skating Club? Like, were there other people involved to bring you to this state?
So most of the process from the other groups was just the concern of, well, with minor hockey not being able to see the score clock on the far end, and concerns with the heat in there. So those groups have kind of approached with different concerns throughout the years, and then a lot of from staff seeing these things as well, seeing that there's a whole bunch of people piled over on the far corner that again can't see the score clock, or people in there and they've got all kinds of blankets and then cover them up, and it's just because they're a portable bleacher, they're wide open underneath, and there's air and cool air all around them. So
Yeah.
you can do quite a lot with a blanket, but
Well,
we'd like to make that better.
and thanks for bringing up the heating, because it was one of the things I had thought about. I haven't spent a lot of time in those arenas since I've come back, but I think there's a few in this room that have quite a lot of ass time in that in that arena, and probably have some views on the general concept that you've got. I like the heating, but the report doesn't talk about heating. I mean, and we're not really maxed out yet either with potential grant from NDIT, right? We probably could go to 130,000 and get the full 100.
Yeah, you bet.
Right.
At this point, we had gotten this far in the design of the bleachers themselves and found out where our rough numbers were. And NDIT opened up its next stage in the grant process, the next quarter, I guess. So we felt that we bring it forward with endorsement. We can try to apply for grant funding that way. And ideally, if we can get even and more covered with grant funding, then that's even better.
Okay, we'll talk about the potential grant application maybe before some of the design. Is there any other questions that anybody has? Councilor Enos?
Is there an opportunity to ask for more grant funding to do this exact same thing on the other side, so you have a home and visitor side?
on.
Because the room would be the same, like the area would be the same on either end of the ice surface.
Also, at the other end of the ice surface is where we bring our Zamboni or Olympia through. So we would need to keep that corner
Oh,
open.
right.
Plus we have our light and electric panels there, which there may be opportunity where we could relocate some of that. Will be additional costing.
Yeah,
So there,
because it'd be nice to be able to have that home visitor section, especially for tournaments, right?
right.
So
We can explore that for sure if council wishes.
just a thought.
Anybody else? Councilor Gray?
Being height challenged, I'm here to tell you that if you don't rate, and I, you know, like, you know, my problem with drawings, but the way I see this drawing, the bleachers, the first two rows, you wouldn't be able to see over above the boards. Do you know what I'm saying? So currently, right now, with what we've got there, you have to pretty much, if you're a shorter person, sit on the top row there to be able to see down onto the ice, like, right, do you know what I mean? And I don't see that that's improved using these bleachers that you've got on this drawing, unless somehow they're raised up. I think there's going to be the same problem in that those first two rows become problematic for vertically challenged people.
I can appreciate that for sure. In this drawing, and if you're like me, printed off in 8.5 by 11, so the writing is very small. But the first row in this one is written as 1 foot 10 inches or 22 inches high. On the current ones you have now, the first set of seating is 17 inches and the second row is 22 or 25.5. So it'll be kind of right in the middle of those two for the first row, and then would increase from there going up. So it does increase the height of the first one a little bit. It may not completely, I wouldn't completely change that overall compared to the whole thing. With the additional extra seating and the way it's shaped, there will be a little bit more seating at the top and increase the amount of seats at the top. So that would help out. There may also be opportunity where we could raise the whole thing. That would make create other logistical challenges, especially for something like wheelchair access, where now we would have to stretch back further to create ramping or stairs to go up and down. And there is a doorway in the middle of that too, which we have to accommodate. So there may be challenges there, but it's something we can explore for sure. We have also reached out to them asking if there was any way that we could incorporate accessible seating in the design, somewhere for where wheelchair could ramp up to see the ice surface better as well.
That would be great. And then the other thought that I thought of, the other thing that I thought of is if there was money, additional money, we could, Councilor Enax, do another set of bleachers where the bleachers are now, and then just, excuse me, have another clock. I mean, you know, I'm sure that technology would allow us to mirror the clock or whatever so that people could see it.
And that was an option we had discussed with when we met with the minor hockey president at the time as well, or potentially even having a clock at the end of the rink where everyone could see it, even with the bleachers as is versus where it is. The wiring is set underneath the concrete, so down through the ground over to where the location is now. So I don't know about the capability of moving it, but I'm sure anything's possible that way. Yeah, exactly right. You just need some money, anything's possible. So we could potentially run wiring over to a different spot, or we could do a big fancy center jumbotron even and really move up there. Although I
So
imagine
Councilor Andrews,
Sure, you ran under the bus.
I'm very much in favor of the application to NDIT. I don't know that we want to focus on those amounts. Like if we know what the maximum amount is, maybe we should consider that. I'm not sure.
I sit on that board and I can't remember when the deadline is for this intake. Can anybody remind me, please? Deadline, like, do we have a little bit of time to put some, does anybody know when the last intake day is?
The goal would be to maximize the grant for sure.
Right. So if I think if we can do that and we can look at, you know, the heating process and whatever that looks like for the heating, if we can look at raising up at least what you've got designed there now. I mean, obviously it will take a walkway box and stairs and or a ramp. So that's, you know, that that's fairly small in the big scheme of a project like this, right? So maybe if you can take the time to focus in on that and look to the maximum grant amount, and we'll look for approval tonight for that. Okay,
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to work towards that.
is there a resolution from council? Please.
Okay, I'll make a motion that an application be made to NDIT Recreation Grant Program for funding for the construction and installation of permanent bleachers for the secondary arena, maxing out the grant
Opportunity.
opportunity.
Moved by Councillor Grooming. Are you seconding for Councillor Roper? So essentially it's 70% dollars, right? So it's maximum of $133,000 ish, right? So, okay, that would be our potential contribution, would be the $33,000, and that would be in next year's budget, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so that will come at budget time. Is there any other comments from staff? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Welcome. Thanks for the report. That brings us 7.4 administration report 5123 transportation update, ride hailing, ride sharing, taxi, whatever. Ms. Shepherd is here to speak to the report. Floor is yours.
Hi, Mayor and Council. So this report is put together to just give a bit of an update on the transportation issues in the community and projects that we've had on the books, as well as speak to the inquiry about ride-hailing services. So as Council's aware, we've had some transportation challenges in the community, and the loss of the taxi and rental car services have further strained that sector. In late 2022, Council may remember that staff had proposed a project for a transportation solutions project as part of the 2023 budget. Unfortunately, that proposed project didn't meet the desired scope of the fund that we had applied for, and so it wasn't carried out. Over the summer, however, the complete community needs strategy was proposed, and that one does include a transportation assessment to understand the current gaps as they relate to social needs. And that project is expected to kick off in the coming months. Aside from those two projects, the ride-hailing services inquiry, ride-hailing services are licensed through the province of BC. Currently in our region, there are 3 providers, one of which is Coastal Rides, who did provide the introductory letter to council last year. In regards to licensing, there aren't any municipal bylaws which would hinder or prevent the operation of a ride-hailing service. However, some of the considerations that a company might have before going into a rural remote community are challenges associated with the availability of drivers, adequate licensing of the drivers, and then, like for Coastal Rides, the vehicle has to be within 10 years old. But anybody that is interested in driving for Coastal Rides can apply online. They need a class 2 or 4 license, I believe. The way that the ride-hailing app works with Coastal Rides is drivers use a smartphone app and to request and pay for rides, and drivers have a separate app for pickup and route instructions. The Coastal Rides service or any ride-hailing provider vets their drivers, and then so there's that liability. Usually they have their own insurance platform. Within the report, there was a couple of links to projects in other areas, one of which was the Zunga bus in Paul River. The Coastal Ride app uses the same software that Zunga bus pilot project used, if council explored that at all. And then currently, in the community, there is no public transit except for the Senior Society has broadened their scope. So they are providing for the community right now. But in conversation with them, there's a challenge with funding and staffing, and the buses themselves will be in need of repair at certain points. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Hillary. Councilor Roper, please.
What are some of the challenges that, let's say, a traditional taxi or cab company might be facing when trying to start operations in the area?
So my understanding is that through the pandemic, that hit our local provider quite heavy. And then as that shut down, I think people were utilizing other services, getting rides from friends and family as they needed to. It seemed like as that was happening, it was not just Fort Nelson specific. Smithers was in the news a lot. They lost their taxi provider as well. And I think the ride hailing industry has sort of moved in and helped or somewhat cut it off as the situation has unfolded. I think the personal fare isn't in line with a lot of sustainable goals. And so there might be additional fees and taxes that are on taxi drivers or those providing services that don't meet the Clean BC goals and that sort of thing as well. That's my understanding.
So there's also the licensing expectations of the province that a person would have to go through. I'm sure there's probably bonds that have to be put up, and for some people that can be barriers to do that. I know you had requested that we start talking about this a little bit. Do you think we should be trying to do more with respect to a ride hailing service? We know that Coastal Rides sent us a letter, right? And that made a proposal to at least look at the community. I wonder, do you feel we should reach out to them, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say whatever we can do to try to attract that type of service to the community would be very important right now, because as we've indicated, there is a large gap. And I mean, when you get into the middle of the winter and people need rides at -40, it can create bad situations. I'd like to know if there's any other smaller communities that are also facing these issues that we might all be able to put our voices together to try to attract maybe even some of these larger companies, maybe Uber or someone to not just focus on the larger areas, but perhaps the urban and rural areas as well.
Yeah, I think I think that just is their general policy, the bigger ones, right? That they just stay in the bigger communities, but at least Coastal has reached out to us. I'd certainly like to consider getting them to do whatever it is. Someone had said that they were interested in assessing the community, and it might have said something about it may take remind me a potential
Some interim.
yeah, money from the municipal, some funding to make it all work, but we never explored it, right? We kicked it over to what we thought was going to be a transportation study. And then we never got the grant for the transportation study. We rolled that into another grant that won't be done probably till later next year, right? Before we really get that grant done. So it makes some sense to me that if we can try to at least find out what their proposal is, and whether it's worthwhile in this community, we should probably move on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, as well as, just understanding all the intricacies that go along with it. Like if we need to have drivers that have certain licenses or class of license, perhaps there's things we can do to attract that sort of training in the area so that we can get going with that. But I think it's going to be really important moving forward. And I think the ride hailing, the app sort of culture, I think that's really moving in, as you stated. I think that is the future. I think eventually, these bigger companies are going to want to expand to the little areas. And I mean, this is just a great community to try things out and do pilot projects. But I think if we do have a ride hailing company that's prepared to provide a proposal and some more information, I think we should re-engage with them and find out the details. Absolutely.
Would you like to make that a motion, Councilor Roper?
Sure, I'll do my best here. Could we direct staff to re-engage with Coastal Ride Hail? What's the name of the
ride?
Coastal Rides to provide us with proposal.
Moved by Councilor Roper. Is there a seconder? Councilor Andrews. Is there any further discussion? Comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Administrative report 7.5, sorry, 7.5 administration report 5223, pound keeping, timelines, animal welfare.
Hi again. So this report, before he provides information regarding some challenges that were associated with a former resolution to suspend the policy of humane euthanizing of animals. As council is aware, in 2021, the Soul Animal Rescue closed its doors due to an insurmountable strain on volunteers and resources to continue operations. When that occurred without any option to transfer abandoned animals to a rescue, council requested through public comment to suspend the animal control bylaw policy. So over time, it's become apparent that this has reduced options for humane management of animals when transfer to an animal rescue is not an option or animals are not deemed adoptable. Through conversation with the SPCA, we've been looking at guidelines which advocate for the adoption of abandoned animals, including reasonable intervention for those animals when they need it to make them adoptable. And the SPCA also recognizes that there are some cases in which animals are not adoptable, and in those circumstances, they do undertake humane euthanizing. And then just to reiterate that the NRM animal control bylaw, the municipality is relying on the services of animal control, pound keeping, and animal sheltering services, with only animal control and pound keeping in force currently. So based on that information, there is a recommendation in the report.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Can you tell us some of the issues that are happening with the current pound group and the 72-hour notice and what's happening there with that?
So if an animal is impounded and is not deemed adoptable or is not being adopted, I should say, maybe there are behavior challenges for an instance of a dangerous dog. There's no option now without that ability to euthanize. So the animal would be kept in a kennel for indefinitely. The SPCA has stated that they are not able to take any animals from Fort Nelson in any of their branches. And while they've given a timeline of maybe a few years, they could look at providing service. They're just not able to at this time. We have an animal rescue organization that is volunteer run, relying on foster families, which is short, capacity is limited. So yeah, again, it's that piece of an animal being moved into the pound with no option when there's no ability to transfer it out of the pound. If it's dangerous, if it's very old or very ill, it becomes inhumane to keep it in such circumstances.
Thank you. Okay, I see that there is some correspondence on page 77 of 92 in your agenda package from the North Paw Animal Rescue Society. Did you see this before you wrote this report? Were you aware of this correspondence that we got?
The report was done before the
Correspondence came in? Okay. So I'd like a motion that we move this correspondence forward to the discussion right now. Anybody wants to make that move? By Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So this is a funding proposal from North Paw Animal Rescue. I'm not sure if they're a society or not, but talking about two proposals, one for animal care, welfare and sharing for cats, and the other one for just animal care welfare. When your report refers to entering into a discussion, is that sort of what your intention was to approach North Paw or anybody else that might offer a service like this and have a discussion? Or because I know at budget time it came, we were pretty taken aback by the size of the potential the dollar figure at the time, and whether or not we could afford that based on the service that we'd seen in the past or on the budget. So I guess I'm just wondering if, I guess if you haven't seen it, then you wouldn't be able to comment on whether or not that's what you were proposing by saying that you would negotiate with potential service providers.
Yeah, so I have reviewed the agenda. I am aware of the correspondence now.
Okay.
And I would just say that over the last couple of years, there's been significant work undertaken to engage the local providers of animal welfare services. So we have been very aware of the different services and options. And then council did direct engagement to do an EOI at one point and then an RFP as well. So we did come back with numbers. I did notice in the proposal that it's a revised number.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think the intent or the idea that staff can engage is based on council's direction of what services they would like to see in an animal sheltering agreement,
Mm,
that a contract be negotiated.
yeah. And you would hope that at least, if we do put this out to some kind of award or tender, that, because it's 3 organizations providing these services for us, right? One that's picking up dogs, one that's harboring the dogs, and then one potentially that looks after the welfare of animals, not just dogs, after 72 hours. So that would, you'd hope that they would all be able to work together, and at least some of these animals that potentially would need to be euthanized, or they'd then have a place to go. Right? And if not, then if council's wishes are to reverse the resolution, I guess, that suspended the euthanization process in the bylaw, then that would only happen on the rare occasion. Those are some of my thoughts weaving through all of that. So I'm very interested in hearing council's thoughts. Councilor Growing.
So my question in terms of the recommendation was that that bylaw 7521 be rescinded, and that the NRM Animal Control Pound Licensing Bylaw 09/2009 be restored. So when I read that bylaw under section 15, impounded animals, 15.1 says, during any period of impoundment, every animal shall be supplied with sufficient quantity of food and water. If an impound animal is not reclaimed within 72 hours of detention, such animal may be disposed of by human destruction, adopted by eligible persons, or sale or surrendered by an animal welfare agency capable of arranging for adoption of the animal to eligible persons. So I'm just wondering, if council decides to go back to this bylaw, is it possible that we add in a policy that before any animal is euthanized, that the policy is set, like, and open for discussion, but like the real attempts have to be found, real attempts to find the owner, like a conference with the animal welfare or sheltering agency to see if it's possible to get the animal rehomed, or if there's services that are available there. And then only as a last resort that animal is euthanized. So in order for me to vote for the rescinding of that bylaw that we're currently working under, I would need a set policy for that, just the word destruction that they have in there. I just would want it to be further defined. So I'm just wondering if it's possible that we could change that part of the bylaw or add to it.
Question to staff.
Any amendments are possible that council desires, and any policies that support the implementation of your bylaws, make it all the more clear for staff and service providers. We collaborated on drafting the report, and I think through the last several months, we've found a number of opportunities for improvement for this bylaw, but we thought we wanted to bring that forward as a separate discussion, because it really talks about that kind of core policy of council around all animals, and our that's You might have seen that difference in the proposals from North Paws, that there's one proposal that deals with cats kind of as a first and foremost, and then one that's a bit more blended. And that was one of the things that we've been struggling with over the last couple months, is that our bylaw doesn't give us much authority when it comes to dealing with cats. So again, that's general policy direction from council. I don't expect to get that tonight, but we'd like to kind of open that dialogue around improving this bylaw to fix that. And then just, I know it absolutely, it doesn't exist in policy today, but we've brought the numbers to council prior around euthanizations, and they're extraordinarily low over the last decade. And it's just been the service provider that we've had that pound relationship with. It is the last resort. And they don't provide any formal adoption services, but they try as they can to do that first. But there's always going to be those cases where adoption isn't the best case for that animal either. So anyways, just hopefully some comfort that, you know, there's a window of time, but it's certainly not, nobody's watching that clock to.
Isn't there an ongoing case where there's the dog there for several weeks now that hasn't been able to?
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks.
And it lends to that. What's the quality of life for that animal if there's no, if adoption's been unsuccessful to date?
Right. Okay, so just to be clear, the recommendation is to rescind resolution number 7521, not the bylaw itself. Right, so it's to rescind a particular suspension of, will be clause 15, I think you pointed out as. But perhaps we could add out to speak to Councillor Gerwing's concerns around specifics around clause 15, I think it is, that you pointed out. 15.1. What sort of timelines were you looking at for a review of that bylaw? Were you?
That's at your direction. I mean, this has persisted. A lot of these challenges have persisted, frankly, for 2 years or more. And we are lucky now that we have stable animal control services. We have a good relationship with the pound, and it's my understanding that there's a good relationship, albeit informal, with the animal rescue organization as well. And perhaps with that collaboration, we'd be in a good position to kind of get council's thoughts and really kind of make some forward movement with this. So, you know, we'd be prepared to prioritize it. I know it's a strain on bylaw services and the contractors we have when there's so many uncertainties with the bylaw itself at this point. So
we're looking at potentially before the end of the year.
that'd be our goal, or my goal.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have to put what I'm thinking is we're duplicating work by putting in some specifics around 15 and then going ahead and changing the bylaw to add those specifics later. I know so if the timeline, if we're doing very few euthanizations over the last 10 years, then there's probably not that many between now and the end of the year. There probably wouldn't be a need to put specific words around that if we add into this recommendation a review of the bylaw.
I don't know that I would be comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think that one of the reasons why there's been very few euthanizations is because we had that resolution to say that no animals could be euthanized. But I think even before that, there were very few animals euthanized. And I know that, I don't know. I feel that everybody is working together for the very best for the animals in their care. But for me to vote in favor of that, I would need some policy put in place before I could vote for that. But additionally, I think it's important that we review the correspondence from the animal rescue organization that we are and have been for years relying very heavily on for the care. of the animals in the community. And, you know, it's a volunteer organization. And I think we've heard loud and clear that they need some sort of formal financial support. And so I would like to address that.
That's why,
Additional.
that's why I brought that
That's-
correspondence forward, right,
Mm-hmm.
at this time, because the secondary part of this recommendation is the and that regional council approves staff to negotiate contracted animal sheltering.
I would like
service.
to vote yes for the and part, but no for the first part. So you're putting them two together, so making it hard to vote.
Okay.
So there's an opportunity. I mean, if council as a whole feels that the policy would apply regardless of any future amendments to the bylaw, around that kind of order of priority in terms of attempts to adopt, rehome, transfer, we can bring back a draft policy without much trouble, and then it can be considered part and parcel with any future amendments as well. I think it would probably stand regardless of any future amendments, frankly. But that's at your discretion as a group.
Yeah, I didn't want to try to craft something here tonight. So if I don't want to let this die either.
Yeah.
Because if we let it die, it doesn't come back. So there needs to be a resolution put on the floor. And then it could be referred or deferred or tabled till such time as the policy comes. What are your wishes?
Before we do that.
Okay, sure.
So I would just like to add to the discussion that that we look at speaking with Fort Nelson First Nations Council, Prophet River Council, and Fort Liard's governing structure as well, to see if there's any possible financial contributions to the animal rescue organization in town that provides services to all three of those communities. So I don't think that we have to go it alone. I think that a letter or some sort of communication from our council to their council should take place.
This is not gonna happen before the new budget, I don't think. So it could be that certainly can be introduced when we do the budget cycle and look at whatever the negotiated price ends up being. We didn't like it last budget time and so it didn't happen. But you know, I think these numbers are way closer to what we had thought it would be. And so it could be included in this budget cycle for sure. And that would be a great opportunity to send a letter out at that time to the other. We're considering this service in the region. Are you prepared to partner with us and participate? So
I very much agree with that, but additionally, I would just like to perhaps staff can connect with the animal rescue organization in town to see if they can wait that long to get some stable funding. Like maybe there's a bridging that we can do to get them through to the next budget season, because we all know how long that all takes. And we're only October now, and we're looking at possibly not having any funds available till May. I don't know what the financial situation is, but I would like to see staff check with that animal rescue organization to see if they would need some bridging financing to get them through to budget season.
sure, so that could be part of the negotiate contracted animal sheltering services. Can I have a resolution? The resolution that's there is fine. We just then have to defer it.
Just have to answer.
So the resolution, we can't defer any of this until there's a resolution on the floor, right? So I've heard staff say that they can come back fairly quickly with a policy to take care of the particular concerns that you and others might have. And so that I would hope that would be the next meeting, but we can't move on any of it till there's something on the floor for us to defer to. So I'm looking for a resolution on the recommendation. If this dies, it does not come back. Go ahead, Councillor Souls.
I recommend that RM resolution number 7521 be rescinded and an RM animal control bound licensing bylaw number 9209 be restored and implemented as originally intended. And that regional council approves staff to negotiate contracted animals sheltering services.
Duly moved by Councillor Souls. Is there a seconder?
I thought we wanted to add some parameters into here, so I'm just trying to work on wording. It's not that I'm opposed to it. I just want to add some other parameters
Can you
into
second
it.
it so we can get it on the floor?
I'll second it, yes.
Okay, thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? So is there anything that you would like to add? Is there any amendments that you would like to make to that? When it comes to the policy, we've given direction to staff to come back to the next meeting with policy. We haven't deferred this yet, but we have given some direction to staff to that. With respect to I've heard staff say that they want to work on this animal control bylaw or whatever it's called nowadays. And they would bring it back to us before the end of the year. I've heard that we want to send a letter to the other councils in the region to see if this service is something that they'd be prepared to help pay for. And I've heard that we've asked staff in the negotiations, if this is to go through, to ask the animal welfare group if there's a need for bridge funding. I've heard all of those things. Do they need to be in the resolution? Councillor Gerwing.
So I'm just wondering, the point that I would like to add to the resolution is, be restored and implemented as originally intended with policy-specific expectations to item 15.1 be developed.
Would you like to make an amendment?
I would.
Okay, Councillor Gerwing makes that amendment to add that. You've got it in writing. Not that you have to, but you can repeat it back for.
Okay, the whole thing?
No, I just want you to read, okay, read the motion after from be restored.
And implemented as originally intended with policy-specific expectations to item 15.1 be developed, and that regional council approve staff to negotiate contracted animal sheltering services.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Roper. Discussion on the amendment? Staff? Fits okay with what you, okay? Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. The original motion as amended, is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next meeting, we'll be able to review what that policy is and either adopt it or change it. Okay. That brings us to item 7.6, Administration Report 5323, Northern Development Initiative Trust Annual Grant Applications. Did I miss anything? No. I'm on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this should be fairly routine. This is an annual report that we put in front of Council, just indicating that we do intend on applying on 3 different grant opportunities with NDIT. One of those is the Business Facade Improvement Program, which does require council resolution. And so the recommendations are outlined in the report for your consideration.
My mouth's so dry. Questions for staff? I think this is pretty straightforward. It's an annual kind of a thing. So would somebody like to read the motion? It's fairly lengthy. Councilor Roper?
Sure, I'll move option 1, the recommended motion that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality submit an application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust Grant Writing Support Program for the maximum amount of $8,000 to offset the costs of providing grant writing and support services, and that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality submits an application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust Economic Development Capacity Building Program for the maximum amount of $50,000 to partially fund a regional economic development officer position, and that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality submit an application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust Business Facade Improvement Program for the maximum amount of $20,000 to fund the 2024 Fort Nelson Business Facade Improvement Program.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councilor Enoch. Thank you very much. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that carries. Thank you. Item 7.7, Administrative Report 5423, the Downtown Revitalization Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the Downtown Revitalization Plan comes back to you with a little bit more information about the high-level plan and how it fits within the governance and working of the municipality, and then the future prioritization of council through either admin reports coming forward in the future or budget requests in the budget and the budget process, as well as more information from NDIT. So we did reach out to NDIT to confirm that we had met the grant requirements. We were able to get grant funding to cover a good portion of the planning process that we undertook last year. And without it being adopted, we do not meet those requirements. So to get that grant funding, we do have to see it adopted by council. And then the adopted plan would also serve as the base point for applying for their secondary grant funding for implementation, or any future projects that council wants to do in the downtown area that corresponds with this plan.
Thank you. Can you remind me what we did? Did we just receive it? We didn't refuse it, did we? Like, we didn't, yeah.
No.
We didn't say no, we don't
Yeah.
like it. We just said we
You
were just gonna
received it
receive
for
it
information.
for information and great report, but we just received it.
And then we were going to engage in a priority setting session
Right,
on the plan because there were factors that we
Right.
wanted to discuss as a council.
right.
And we haven't.
We wanted to make sure there was approvals of council before we moved on any portion of the project, however small or large it was. Okay, so essentially what I'm hearing is that we need to give it some sort of approval, even if it is approval in principle, for NDIT to be comfortable that we've completed the project. All right. Okay. What are councils? Oh, Councilor Souls, question?
I think that the recommended option here is actually accommodates what we need because we have the full discussion council before anything moves ahead on it. Any particular goes ahead with projects. So I'm ready to recommend option number 1.
Would you like to read it, please, for the folks?
That
in
the
our viewing
downtown
audience?
revitalization plan be approved in principle with the commitment to engage with, inform regional council prior to undertaking projects specific to downtown revitalization.
Moved by Councilor Souls. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Roper. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Yeah. 7.8, Administration Report 5523 is trade shows, including court site for discussion. Oh, it's you again.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Quick transition. So this report comes to you with some information about trade shows that we've attended in the past, including the Quartzsite one, which came up in question at the last council meeting, and includes the background on Quartzsite. So staff was able to attend for a couple of years on behalf of Northern BC, on behalf of Destination BC, as part of a collective called North to Alaska. So it was a great honor to be able to participate in that, and it worked quite well. It was a very popular trade show, but noting that there would be some challenges with, I think, only providing information about the Northern Rockies, just because those travelers are looking for that broader scope. So the information's in front of council for your discussion.
Thank you, Krista. Is there any comments? I think the report was really good. It gave me a history lesson of sort of how it worked, which makes a lot of sense that, you know, people in southern United States that may want to go to Alaska, which is every one of them, you know, wants to, you know, is searching out information but it's not just the one piece of information. It's really everything from Dawson Creek to Nome and further. And it makes some sense. And I was under the impression through my own that we had gone there on our own, but really it was with this group, which is sort of like the Circle Tour group, right? It was just a different bunch. Is that correct?
So the North to Alaska originally was Alberta, Yukon, BC, and Alaska that had partnered together. And then in the last few years, I believe funding had drained in other provinces, territories, states. And so it was mainly being funded by Destination BC.
Right.
And then they were looking for additional representation from our province.
So it just died on the vine, withered on the vine, is it, or?
So I think a couple things. So I think due to that funding breakdown from the original partners, I think that was putting a strain on Destination BC. So I think it was being evaluated based on that merit anyways. And then COVID-19 hit and traveled to the States, and then it never got brought back up. From those organizations, there was also staff changeover right at that same time. So
do you think there might be some interest in reviving that?
I think that there might, and we've also got some other kind of Northern BC groups that might be really interested. And then I think it's just being creative and making sure that we still have information, because people want a trip plan, even as low as the border. People want to know how you can come across the border, where they can come across the border.
Yeah. But it's not like you're reinventing the wheel, right? I mean, it's there's got to be, that information has got to be archived somewhere that everything was sort of, you know, updated. And the idea is to have funding partners along the way that want to participate in something like this. So like, I'd like the original concept. It makes a whole lot of good sense. And, you know, and if we have a couple of people that could participate in something like that, it makes a ton of sense to me. Councillor Enax, I know you had some thoughts on this.
I just thought it was a fantastic opportunity when I was in Quartzsite. Yeah, if we could find someone to partner up with, I think that would be a fabulous idea. You think that's possible?
Yeah, I can definitely reach out to some people in different organizations. For a clarification on the timeline, are we looking for like January of 2024, or are we looking to develop those conversations for?
I wouldn't expect that you'd be able to put a group together before this year. That wouldn't be my expectation. I think that unless you think you could. I think, to be fair, it makes sense that it would be a year out. You could have some preliminary idea at budget, right? If there's interest in that, and then we can have that conversation at budget time. I mean, obviously it won't be completely fleshed out, but you'll have a preliminary idea who might be involved and whether or not what the cost might be.
Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, so there was no recommendation, so it was for discussion. Would staff like a recommendation from council to allow Krista to make some inquiries? Yes, please. Yeah. So could I have a resolution to allow staff to make inquiries about, what's it called? No, it was, the original one was called, what'd you call it? The North to Alaska?
North to Alaska.
Somebody like to make that recommendation? Anybody?
What am I making?
A recommendation would be to allow staff to investigate the possibility of reinitiating the North to Alaska concept.
That one. What he said.
Specific, well, specific to the group first. I think where they go would be a determination from the group, right? Of course, that makes sense, but I don't want to say that that's where they have to. Let the group decide. All we're doing is allowing our staff to investigate the possibility of reinitiating this project. So I
Okay,
needed.
so,
So
yeah, that's what I said.
so I have a mover. Did you catch what I had said?
I have moved by Councillor Enox that staff be directed to investigate the possibility of reinitiating a North to Alaska concept.
Thank you. And I have a seconder, Councillor Gurley.
Okay.
I thought you were seconding it. Oh, okay.
I most definitely can.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe we're getting too friendly, yes? Thank you. I thought that you were seconding it with that comment that you made. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for the report. Don't even look at me. Don't look at me or you're in. 7.9 Administration Report 5623 on the Town Square Renewal Project update. Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The report before you this afternoon is just for information, as stated. Information was brought to you on February 13th, and you were presented with them in report number 4. It was a comprehensive overview of the Town Square Renewal Project from start to finish. Try to bring new councillors and new mayor up to speed at that time. Since then, we've received a comprehensive construction cost plan from Shandos Construction. That was quite a lot higher than we had anticipated. Or the original budget from MEE that we were given of approximately 18 million. The new comprehensive estimate plan was 26,600,000. We had hoped to be successful in the applications to the Strategic Priorities Fund for $6 million. We weren't successful in that application. We're still waiting for confirmation from the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Fund for $3 million. Had we been successful on both those with an $18 million cost, we would have been sitting at a $9 million cost to the municipality. Currently, with $26 million not being successful for the $6 million SPF fund, we're sitting considerably higher than we feel comfortable with right now. So currently, we're in further discussion with Shandos and amongst the team here internally to try to think of alternate options to try to move ahead with the necessary upgrades that came out of the condition assessment in 2019, specifically related to mechanical, electrical, and code and accessibility upgrades. So the plan for staff was to gather more of that information on the alternate options and bring an update back to Regional Council for further discussion and direction based off that. I'm happy to answer any questions Council might have.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions? Do you have a timeline?
How fast do you want it? We've
I'm
been,
particularly concerned if there's any safety issues or, issues around air quality, accessibility, those things that put us sort of contrary to the code. And what those, right, those have to be done regardless of the bigger picture. we've got to bring the building into compliance as best we can and make sure that it's safe for all the staff that are here. The efficiencies and things, it's a workable building, right? But if it's not safe to be in, so that's my concern, and I'm sure it's your concern as well. And so it just, if there's nothing that's sort of hounding at us that we need to fix it, right, or people are going to get sick, then it doesn't need to take as long. But if we've got those kind of things that are starting to creep in, or excessive code violation, I guess they're not a violation because it was in code when it's just been a code change, right? So, you know, if anything's excessive, I think we need to know about it sooner rather than.
So
My thoughts
speaking from the code aspect.
as the building inspector.
As the building inspector, if we were to start renovations, once there is a threshold, once we start to renovate a certain portion, everything has to be brought up to code. to
Yeah.
today's standard. As it sits right now, we were compliant when it was built.
Right.
Under that code of the day, we haven't changed anything, so we're still considered compliant.
Right.
There are considerations regarding the mechanical and the electrical, the age of life. Mechanical and electrical are kind of at end of life right now. So that is something that is probably top on priority for consideration.
Is that excuse me, is that based on time estimates of its age, or is that based on actual physical inspection?
I believe that was time estimate, right?
Right. So we don't have electrical that's going to catch fire,
Not that we're aware of.
but we haven't pulled any walls apart either.
100% we have not.
We'll leave it with you. Oh, Counselor Souls.
You know, the progression of the discussions around this have been going on. This is quite a long trail. And it's unfortunate for us that we had Chandra's do these estimates in a context of a rapidly deflating value of dollars, or inflation. And so the unknowns that come with that, and the supply chain issues that were really happening on a grand scale during the COVID era, where they were starting to make some of these estimates. So you start moving into the $26 million price tag rather than a 16 or 18 million. And I think that we're starting to move into the knowledge that it'd be better to start talking the idea over from the scratch, simply because you're into new building territory when you start getting into those kind of levels. So I too I'm of the mind that the basic things that need to be repaired without triggering a repair of the whole, I mean, a code, bringing everything up to code is prudent on our part.
Staff.
Yeah, I just like to add in terms of, I mean, obviously we've basically hit a bit of a reset because we've hit a threshold from a cost perspective, and it comes down to affordability. And also before, when you look at a $10 million budget versus a $26 million cost, the cost analysis starts to swing the pendulum the other way in terms of, you know, how much do you put back into the building. That said, we continue to maintain the facility, right? I mean, we've had discussions around the electrical component, the replacement of certain things are time sensitive from a end of life timing perspective, not from an inspection perspective. So one of the original plans was to rip out all the electrical, but that might be overkill from a scope perspective. There's mechanisms that can be utilized to inspect those without penetrating the walls and whatnot. So those are the discussions we're having now to get a true understanding of what that looks like. Similar, I mean, we've done repairs to and some replacement of the HVAC this year because there was some issues with the heat exchangers and whatnot. So I mean, we haven't stood back and waiting for things to fall apart around us. It's just, you know, when you start making decisions around certain items of replacement, if they're not needed from a safety or a maintenance or operations of the facility, we're deferring those because we really, you know, want to get a good understanding of what that cost is. And this is a good opportunity for us to do this now. Because I'd much rather do it now than come back and ask for forgiveness later. If we were sitting at an extreme budget, we see how terrible that goes over in any kind of, if it's local government or any business for that matter. So we really want to get a true understanding of what that is, and with the inflation rates that have occurred, I think it's been a changing dynamic, just steady, and also some scope. There's some scope that Because this isn't our business. I mean, our business, is local government, not rebuilding buildings. So there's been some scope additions that we weren't aware of originally, that have been added to the pile too, for lack of a better word. So we just want to make sure that we get this right. In the meantime, ensuring the building is safe. It's our number one priority. So if we had any concerns that way, we'd be dealing with it right away, and you'd be the first to know.
Mayor. Anybody else? Councilor Roper?
Yeah, I think some of our original discussions, we were going over safety considerations like fire suppression system, and some other things like the windows, the fact that they haven't been replaced, maybe never. And then we kind of got into a territory where we're looking at more things. Well, if we're going to do this and tear this apart, we may as well do this. And then we were talking about an elevator, and it went from 8 million to 12 million. Now we're to 26 million. And I'm sure if we decided tomorrow to go ahead with the 26 million, that would turn into far more greater than that number. So I think we need to go back to basics if we're going to continue with the building. And really just address those fundamental, essential things that we started the discussions with.
Good. Okay, you guys know, more or less what those are, and I think what our expectations are for timelines to come back. So, the higher the risks, the sooner we want to hear about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to 7:10 Administrative Report 5723, which is the Union of British Columbia Convention Summary. For your information, I think I'd like to staff did an amazing job while we were down there. Actually, before we got down there to help us prepare, I felt very prepared when we were going in to meet with the ministers and the premier. I think the report captures really well, not word for word, but really well what was presented to the ministers and some of the comments back. I'd just like to give maybe a bit of a high overview of sort of what I heard from the different ministers that we approached. So the first one was Ministry of Children and Families, Minister Dean. We were well prepared for this. Councillor Grooming and I sat with Fort Nelson Family Development Society. They gave us some ideas and sort of how things were going. Presented all of that to the minister. Talked a little bit about some of the difficulties family development is having keeping staff, because they're training entry-level staff who are then going to other provincial agencies who could use a similar training, and they're getting paid higher. So understanding trying to get parity there, I think was important. And I think the minister understood that, gave direction to her staff to work with Louise Rogers, who is sort of she's not local, but she manages the local contracts. And we talked about the assessments that need to be done, early childhood assessments, and how we're so far behind. Made a suggestion that maybe Northern Health shouldn't be looking after them. Perhaps it's important enough to the ministry that they should be looking after them. And then we also talked about supports around youth mental health and opportunities there. And again, the minister was deferring to her, would be the deputy minister. Is that the lady that was sitting? I think the deputy minister, about supporting some of the initiatives that Louise had talked about. So that we put that in front of her, that if you could at least support some of the ideas that Louise has about changing some of the contracts to make sure that we've got somebody available to help those families while they're on their waiting lists, to try to deal with some of the contractual issues that were there. And then we talked about the FCCs, which was the Family Connection Centers. And then they have a 2-year pilot project. The intention of that is to help relieve some of that pressure. And actually, they can do work without that diagnosis at these family centers. And so we put in a strong advocacy, I think, for them to consider Fort Nelson for that, because we're kind of doing it anyway. Right? And so I think that meeting went fairly well. I think the deputy minister was receptive to our lobbying on behalf of Louise, I think, really, because I think Louise has some good ideas. And I did want to go back to the Family Development Society and talk to them about this, but I wanted to have this discussion with council first. Sure.
So yeah, I just wanted to add that this is a really great example of how I think it should always work. So we sent our letter, our notice that we wanted to meet with the Ministry of Children and Family, and then they contacted their people to connect with us to find out, well, what exactly is going on. And so the minister was really prepared from her end, right? But I really liked that connection where we got connected with the supervisor for the programs running out of Fort Nelson. And I've been in the business for how many years and have never made that connection. So by sending this request to meet with the minister, all of a sudden we got that connection made. And I think that is, I wish it would always work like that. So I just wanted to give a hats off to Minister Dean, because I think she did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
So
We'll see what results come out of it, right? It's easy in a 15-minute meeting for them to say, yeah, we're going to support you. But if Ms. Rogers does her job and puts those requests in, at least it's like it won't be like they never heard of it before. They heard about it from us. So
we have that connection now.
that
whereas we
connection's
didn't.
there. Yeah. Then we met with Bruce Wellston, the Ministry of Forests, basically asking for support around wildfire prevention mitigation, some of the work that we're doing. I believe we got a commitment from their senior staff and particularly the local staff that they will work with us to help try to get some of these projects done. So the minister actually didn't even need to speak. It was the deputy minister that appointed, I just forget her name, out of Fort St. John, Carolyn, Vince. She committed that she will work with her staff to help us get that done. So that was good. Also wanted to talk to the minister a little bit around rail. And he never committed like they never do, but he did sort of leave the door open for me to give him a personal telephone call because he has some ideas, some thoughts. So I haven't done that yet. Last week was a little busy for me, but this week I hope to be able to connect with him and talk to him about what these, he has some personal thoughts that he didn't want to share there in the meeting and take up that time. So I'm interested to hear what those thoughts might be.
But he did mention, let's say in parting, that it's kind of funny when you get a senior minister that's been in almost every portfolio over his political career. And he's well aware of Fort Nelson, well aware of our circumstances and the railway. And musing over the BC rail sale, even though that's stuck in their craw for a very long time. He said, we're gonna just have to fix that.
Yeah.
Correct. That's very interesting.
Correct the historical wrong is actually what he'd said. Yeah. Yeah. So that tells me he's kind of, he's got some ideas. I'd like to talk to him about it. He wasn't prepared to share them openly. So there was some good news there from Forest with respect to planning and working with their staff. The Premier, I was really pumped when I was finished with Premier. I got a lot of 2.5 hours information in 15 minutes. I was speed talking, but he sat there and he listened intently. I think he was picking up a little bit about what I was laying down. And I was talking to him mainly around this community being a service center of the north, and if they don't really keep the supports, provincial supports in place, it won't be a service center when he needs it. That the vast majority of the resources are coming out of the Peace River Basin, not the Liard River Basin. But the Liard River Basin is a reserve of resources for this province, and when they do come and work with the nations to utilize that resource, they're not going to have a resource center here if they don't support us. So I think he got that. I hit him up a little bit about the electrical grid and being connected to the grid, and explained to him our issues that we've been having over the summer. And he said he didn't realize that our electricity up here was so fragile. That's what he said. It was so fragile. So he, and then he said, I wonder if that Northwest project, extension project, can assist you.
He didn't know where Fort Nelson is. Sorry.
The Northwest
It was
project
really
goes from
quite
Prince
discreet.
George to Kinmat. We couldn't hit it with a nuclear missile from here. So it told me that the premier really doesn't know where we are. So we've got work to do on the premier to get the point across, and hopefully, hopefully he ripped into his staff after we left a little bit about not preparing them very well. He didn't understand that Fort Nelson and the NRM are the same. He asked that question. Yeah. But he did say that he would speak to the Minister of Health on our behalf, because we've been, we asked him to do the math on how many communities in this province, how many meetings each of the ministers has each year. You should be able to get into a meeting with the minister at least every 3 years. And the Northern Rockies has been asking for 5 years for a meeting with the Minister of Health. Just do the math. He's ignoring us. So he said he would speak to the Minister of Health, whether or not he slaps him on the back and says, do you know where they are up there? Or whether he actually gets them to give us a meeting. Well, I guess we'll have to see how that went. Minister Kang, Municipal Affairs, is really just talking about the IDCA agreement and letting them know, and staff has meetings with staff to look after all of that. We wanted to let them know a little bit about collecting the delinquent taxes in our region, and that we're doing our best to do that. And then she announced that we were awarded $10,000 to do the raw water feasibility study. So we got a little bit of money out of Minister Kang. So that was good. Energy Mines, Low Carbon Innovation, Minister Osborne. Really around this, it was carbon capture, understanding what that technology can do for us, how we need to work together with the nations, and perhaps we can develop some type of a round table between industry and the nations and the leadership of Northern Rockies and maybe into the peace, to understand how we can lower carbon. She had a speech at the breakfast meeting the day before, I think, that we met with her, and she's talked about electrifying the oil and gas industry to lower carbon emissions so that they don't have to burn to create their own electricity. She went on and on and on about that, but no, she couldn't answer the fact that 60% of the region that produces oil and gas is not connected to the grid, right? So that has to happen. And if they're doing that, and so I was pointing this out to her, that if they're going to bring the grid to the Montney, it's only another 200 miles here, right? 200 kilometers if they go all the way to Buckinghorse with power, it's only another 200 kilometers. So, anyways, I think it was eye-opening for her, some of the discussions, and the fact that she didn't talk about carbon capture and sequestration at her breakfast meeting at all. Right. So, okay, that was her, and they have reached out to me. There's day after tomorrow, I think, is they've invited us to an open forum where they're discussing changing the regulation to allow small electrical generation, low carbon electrical generation facilities where they're currently using diesel fuel. So places like Toad and Mount Joe. So all of these things are sort of starting to link together. And I think we probably wouldn't have got that invitation if we hadn't let her know about our concerns. We also let her know that she wanted to know whether we thought she were doing the right thing by extending the electrical vehicle corridors, charging stations all the way to the Yukon. And I told her it probably is the right thing to do because they want to get, but the optics of it are extremely bad in this region because all the power is generated from fossil fuels. And so, you know, it just looks bad when you're trying to charge up an electric vehicle from a generating station that's run on fossil fuels. It's just, the optics are all wrong. So, but I think generally the idea of expanding the highways so that people with electric vehicles can get, you just have to do it right, and you have to do it in conjunction. Got letters on here tonight. We really aren't doing it in conjunction with the locals, right? So they did a pretty good job interacting with us, but as they go up the highway, they've got to do a better job. Did I miss anybody? Oh, BCEHS. We wanted to talk to BCEHS about the ad hoc service providers. And it was a good conversation. You know, I asked staff to carry this conversation because it's more their conversation with BC staff to staff than it is us to the Minister of Health, because he wouldn't meet with us. But they have some ideas about alternate service providers and Hope Air. And I don't know, well, maybe it was a little bit whackable, but they did say that they wanted to have a roundtable between us, themselves, and Northern Health to start talking about these issues. And they couldn't understand why Northern Health hadn't already implemented, you know, these alternate service providers where there's non-medical transfers that need to be done. So if you don't have anything immediately wrong with you that you need a paramedic, you can contract or get one of these services to actually take you to your medical appointment. And if you're doing that, you might as well bring back somebody who's stranded down there. You could do that as well.
But who pays for that? Because if it's
Health
Northern
Authority.
Health doesn't pay right now, it's BC Emergency Health Services that pays to transport patients. So
But only.
that they're not funded, Northern Health isn't funded to transport patients. That's the problem.
But that's medical patients. These are non-medical patients that these providers. So if you have to go somewhere for an appointment, other health authorities, sounds like other health authorities are paying for those transfers to happen. It's not air, it's other ways because they're tighter knit authorities. But in our case, it's probably one of the reasons Northern Health hasn't done it, because it's going to require air service. But they're doing it in other places, and so the idea is not a new idea. It's just a matter of getting Northern Health to be prepared to open up their mind to different types of air carriers, and one of them might be Philers Air, and maybe it's in conjunction with Hope Air. Those are all ideas that potentially you put on the table, but without the ability to come together and talk about it, they're just ideas that die. So a little bit of whack-a-mole, but I think there's a little bit of light at the end. Did I miss anything, Councillor Souls? Okay. Any other questions or comments? I think it was worthwhile. I think they heard some of the things. We'll see what actually comes out of it. I heard some commitments. We'll see if they actually carry out on them. As many or more commitments than I heard ever from any of the meetings I attended when I was in the Peace. We were very well prepared, and I thank staff for setting us up for that. Okay. That brings us to the permissive tax exemption bylaw, 221. Radchik, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an annual event bylaw to introduce the permissive tax exemptions for the coming fiscal year for 2024. And it's pretty straightforward. Changes don't happen a lot with the list of eligible participants. So unless there's any questions, I'll leave it to you.
I think we are looking for first three readings.
Yeah. I would make a motion that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality 2024 permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2212023 be given first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Councilor Goodwin, second by Councilor Enox. Discussion? Getting up to $169,000. That's a lot of permissive tax exemptions. That's big bucks. Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you, Trevor. 8.1 is a letter from Superintendent of School Districts 81, establishment of a Foundry Center in Fort Nelson. If staff have any comments, we're a little short on the time for sitting in on some of the stuff.
Hillary has been involved in this one. She can give council just a bit of an update on where we are and some information, answer any questions. Mayor.
Hi again.
Hi.
So this opportunity with the Foundry came through Mark Theobald, superintendent of SD 81. So he brought it forward. There's an opportunity right now. The Foundry centers are expanding, opening or looking for 12 new centers across BC. The Foundry essentially is an integrated youth services model. They have 5 core services of physical health, mental health, substance use support, social services, and peer support. And essentially their model is that it's like a one-stop shop. The opportunity, there was some information sessions. Staff did sit in on the information sessions. So did representatives from divisions of rural and remote divisions of family practice and SD 81 and maybe somewhere else. We've also had meetings since then where representatives from Prophet River First Nation and Fort Nelson First Nation attended. So there is a little bit of community support. There's a lot to review and to bring together. Mark did mention that the school district probably has the capacity to put forward an application, but understanding the community support is paramount in kicking off a project of this scope. The opportunity is a big funding commitment from the Foundry. They are offering up to 1.5 million for a capital grant for a building or for renovations to a building, and then operationally $1 million for the lead agency. Happy to answer any questions.
1 million per year? Or
Annually, yes, 1 million operations annually. And 1.5 million capital for the establishment of a building.
questions for Ms. Shepherd? Go ahead.
Given that we missed the info sessions, it said they happened September 12th, 20th, and 25th. Do we know what occurred at those info sessions?
Yeah, we did attend. A couple of us did attend from the NRM. And so basically it was more information about the opportunity, about what the Foundry is. And essentially at those community information sessions, I attended one and just kind of looking at the other attendance. In other communities, there might have been, say in one community, there was 6 representatives from school district, health authority, council, that sort of thing. So those information sessions were just kind of about the opportunity.
Did you get the feeling that Fort Nelson could be a potential realistic candidate for an operation of this kind?
It does seem like they are looking to establish centers in more rural, remote locations. Fort St. John is in the queue to get one. I think they're underway right now.
Yeah.
Powell River and Vernon are also approved just this year. It didn't seem like it wouldn't be an option. It seemed like if there's a champion lead agency that is willing to take it on and enough community support to pull together, the applications would be reviewed. The first step is the application, which was also referred to as an expression of interest. And then applicants would be shortlisted November, December. Interviews or meetings would happen January, February, and a final decision would happen in March. So like the agencies in the community that have chatted, there's a understanding of the amount of work involved, and maybe the kind of feeling like at least you would have until March. If you got the application in on the deadline of November 7th, you would have until March to see what other interest there was. Yeah.
You mentioned that the school district thought they might have capacity. Are they really that interested, or like, do you get a feel that they should be the lead agency, or should we be the lead agency?
The school district definitely spoke to not being the optimal provider of those services. So they noted having some capacity to carry out the structure to get the planning underway, to gather the information from the community. Not sure that the local government would be the lead agency either. It's definitely nonprofit organization focused, sort of looking at who would already provide some of those services, getting sort of that understanding, and then looking at the gaps and figuring out how to integrate the services together.
So like Fort Nelson Family Development.
A nonprofit agency. And yeah, just sort of trying to get everybody at the same table to determine interest. There's a couple of different options and different organizations that might have some interest. We have another meeting scheduled for October 16th, if that's Monday.
Which only gives you 2 weeks till the application, 3 weeks till the application deadline. I think somebody needs to take the leadership to make the application happen, and if we can support them in that, this is an amazing opportunity. I mean, the opportunity to bring youth and mental health services into the community, or at a completely different level, because you don't actually run it, I don't think. Right? They supply the money, you hire all the people, and they really, the foundry looks after itself, right? It goes on the model, the provincial model of foundries around the province, which is pretty defined already.
Right. I guess
Yeah.
I have the understanding. I'm just going to go back to SPCA, like
Yeah.
a great big provincial agency with a lot of support and a lot of resources
Mm.
at hand.
Yeah.
So there are foundry centers, and then each community center becomes its own agency.
Right.
And there is that support throughout the province.
Okay.
So
Councillor Green?
what do they need from us then? So we have this letter before us. Do we need to send a letter back, or is Hillary's participation in the planning committee is what they want from us, or do you have a feel for what is required from council?
I think definitely as a start, a letter of support is probably important for the application. And then, council's determination of staff time dedicated to application process is probably good to have.
I'm looking to Mr. Barry to see if we've got the staff time to drive at this.
Well, we can make the time. It's just defer something else potentially, but if council feels it's important enough. Right. So that's the only thing in terms of what. We've got a full plate now, of course, right? We're not looking for things to do, so it just means if we add something to it, we're pushing something else off, or a couple of things to defer it, right? But you said everything is important, and this would be a wonderful, something wonderful for the community. Um,
And it sounds like there's a lot of other agency support around the community. Yeah.
I think we're all suffering from the same issue. But I wonder if we start then with a letter of support and
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then go from there. So I would make a motion that mayor and council write a letter of support for application to Foundry BC.
Moved by Council Gruen, second by
Seconded.
Council Roper. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And thanks to staff for taking the lead and getting to those workshops. Yeah, appreciate that though. It came to us late. All right, 8.2 email correspondence from ERS and Northern Rockies Lodge EV charging stations. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's for discussion. Sorry, yeah, that's for discussion. Councilor Andrews.
When meeting with the ministers, I think you've already articulated some of this. Maybe we, if approved by Miss Skin or Urs here, we can have it forwarded off to kind of further validate what you was saying with the ministers.
Yeah. Would you like to talk a little bit about what he was a deputy minister, I guess, down there was talking about with respect to these stations and some of the discussion we've kind of started down there?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I received this when I received this from Urs when I was at UBCM. What caught my attention actually was the propane fuel that was going to power these. Because we've heard that they were going to put these systems up, but it was always discussed around diesel. I met with Mike Kellett with BC Hydro when I was down there and asked him, amongst other things we chatted about, of course, because BC Hydro is taking up a fair amount of our time this year. Understatement of the day, I guess. And he wasn't aware either of propane. Now granted, he's the public relations for the North, and Hydro is a very large organization with a lot of silos within it. So we're dealing with Joey Kahn and Joe English. So Joe and Joey. So Joey, you've met virtually with the EV charging station locally here that we were confirming a location. So Lisa's reached out to them with nothing back. Confirming another where and
Only from Mike Kellett, who's running the-
and Mike said, yeah. So when we were at the minister meeting, the deputy minister with Energy and Mines, Emily, the deputy minister actually commented when the mayor made the comments around these, the optics around these systems. The deputy minister made the comment around the propane units. So it was kind of, and I'd only had the conversation before with Mike. So it was interesting that they brought that up. Of course, since then, now today, I forwarded an email to council today from Ursa. So that email, that correspondence to Northern Rockies Lodge is being sent to the MLA Davies and the premier. And then Ursa had given me a call also because he has concerns around that propane component. Potential freezing issues with that system in cold weather, because we know propane doesn't bode well when it starts to get into the minus 20s. And then one of his bigger concerns, obviously, besides this, is always, and we've had to advocate and assist, has been the greater picture when it comes to hydro generate or hydro, whatever that grid would look like. If it's adding to what Toad currently has. It's for him, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. He's providing his own power, and then as carbon tax rates go up, it increases his costs, which increases costs of people to his business. But he also had a concern. I mean, he utilized his own dime to put in a level 2 charger in his property, And then he had a concern around hydro, I think making the assumption that they could utilize his space or property for these chargers. And he's not necessarily in favor, of course, so. And his other concern with regard to that was the lack of engagement from hydro with, you know, his business, but also just the surrounding people within Muncho Lake. So a number of items there. We have chatted with Mike Pellet. Mike's already I sent him the correspondence today also, and Mike responded fairly quickly and said they're just working on some information regarding that. Because I actually met with him last Wednesday about the original correspondence that Urs had provided to me directly a couple weeks prior. So he's trying to get information regarding it. We also asked throughout there if these units are propane, have they considered an LNG equivalent, basically? Which we know there's some challenges converting LNG to CNG and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's produced right here on our doorstep and trucked up the highway. They drive right by those stations. So yeah, it's kind of a rundown, a little more probably than the
Yeah, and Earth won't know that there's a few things on the go, right? We made application for the community energy reduction. Cedar, yeah, at Toad, and we sort of looked at expanding the scope of that to potentially take in much. There's this intention papers from Emily that they invite us to participate in, and it's talking about the proposed amendment is intended to support the development of renewable energy generation projects that displace diesel in remote communities served by BC Hydro, known as non-integrated areas. So that's a non-integrated area for sure up there. And so, you know, if there's an opportunity to, you know, to work this in some kind of a generating station somewhere between, you know, the Muncho Lake and Toad River that utilizes water energy or water hydro, that these things are all starting to happen around the periphery. So
I think there's huge opportunities there, given the location and what's not available today. Muncho Lake doesn't have anything, and the Toad, of course, is on diesel power.
Yeah,
and close proximity. And hydro's mandated when it comes to clean energy.
Yeah.
In the future. So, and I did advise Urs on the call today that that are around the Cedar, around that program, that we through a bit of an expansion potential through the thought out there on the expansion of the scope specific to including Muncho Lake in the future. He'd asked still feedback regarding the what have we been hearing about these generating stations, or sorry, EV charging stations, and as I put up the highway and I explained, it's a bit of a short term, in our view, I guess, a short term to solve the issue around the fact that there's no charging infrastructure north of Fort Nelson on the highway, especially areas that aren't served by BC Hydro. And the hope would be, the long term would be to have some kind of connection to some sort of grid.
Yeah,
what that looks like. So he was and I let him know we have no control over it, but we do, but we are advocating on his behalf. And the Cedar was an example of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So can we do a synopsis of everything that you just said and in writing and send that to Urs and whatever ministries that we need to get on the record as how we feel about these EV charging stations, and let Urs know, you know, that like we're not advocating, right? Like we're not just, he's not out there alone.
It's entirely up to council, absolutely, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Should we also perhaps write a letter to BC Hydro and remind them of the opportunities for electrification of our communities along the way while they're doing this project. I mean, it seems that they're in the business of making revenue from these generating stations with regards to EV vehicles. They could potentially make more revenue by including, you know, nearby smaller communities. That could solve a lot of problems. And I think we should also, you know, let them know our views.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the concept of what the letter would look like. Just are we, you know, because I think Earth's main concern, well, he's got two main concerns. One's competition with his own. The other is the fact they didn't talk, right? And so it's that, you know, so writing a letter to them and probably picking up the phone and calling the deputy minister, because he talked to us about it first, right? And let them know that they need to do more when it comes to consulting with those folks at Muncher Lake.
I think, well, I know Ursa's main concern is electrification, period.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah,
That's
of course.
that's his root of, you know, that's.
He makes a wonderful point, and I think that we should expand on that point to include BC Hydro, but the ministries and, you know,
Yeah.
get that information out.
Right, your point might be, if we reach out to the deputy minister, might get more mileage out of it,
Yeah.
possibly from a strategize in terms of how do we get that mileage? Might be a option that's we're better served to take that route, possibly.
Well, you could write several different letters and still call the minister. Like, there doesn't just have to be one action.
Oh, yeah. So how do we want to put that into a resolution? Because there's a lot there, other than just, writing letters of advocacy on, well, it's not on behalf of Bruce, is it? It's just, supporting, yeah, underserved residences when we're putting EV charging stations in.
Well, even like broader than that, could it be something like motion to advocate for electrification throughout the NRM? And then we could do those individual points as specific to whatever ministry we're dealing with or whatever Crown Corporation we're dealing with.
And utilizing our own resources to do so.
Well,
LNG.
because they'll say that we have. I mean, we've got an electrical grid, we've got a 70 megawatt generator here, we're servicing Port Nelson First Nation, Prophet River First Nation. I mean, they'll say we're doing that. This is really aimed at up the highway, right? Because, you know, I think it's pie in the sky to think we're gonna get three-phase power until they do something in Namani.
But it never hurts to ask, right? Never hurts to advocate for what we hope
And
will
if
be
they're-
reality tomorrow.
And if their plans are propane right now, I mean, it's obviously LNG is
Yeah.
the better fuel. to
So yeah,
move.
those are specifics we can write.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that letter.
Right,
I mean,
so
it's the overall sort of theme of the letter, which we would then put into a resolution, right? That's what I'm struggling with.
yeah, well, I would just say that we look for a broader statement, and then we could go to specifics from there.
Help me with some words, staff.
So I said a motion to advocate for electrification throughout the NRM. So I don't know if there's a
Enhanced
second.
electrification.
Okay,
I just want to recognize that it's not like we don't have anything. Right?
okay, motion to advocate for enhanced electrification throughout the NRM in its entirety.
Moved by Councillor Gerwin,
Second.
second by Councillor Roper. Further discussion. Does staff have enough there to? Councillor Gerwin will help you with the letter.
But friend, you're so good.
We'll all work on it. Yeah, give us a draft and we'll help you where we can. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for that. We dealt with 8.3, we moved it forward. 8.4. is all the letters from the Office of the Opposition, from Christy Lear, from the our letter to Minister Dix, and then there's 5 council information packages. If we could receive all of that for,
Can we receive them all for information? I recommend these.
sure, moved by Councillor Sol, second by Councillor Roper, all in favor, opposed, carried. New business, there was no additions by anybody. 9.2 is the establishment of a reserve account for Farm Credit Canada's Agri Spirit Fund on behalf of Fort Nelson Senior Citizens Housing Society. And you will remember that that we assisted with them applying for a grant. Remind me how much it was for? $25,000. They just need us to develop a reserve account that they can spend it on and that we track. So I have a resolution here that council approved the establishment of a reserve account for the management and disbursement of the FCC Agri Spirit Fund grant in partnership with Fort Nelson Senior Citizens Housing Society. Upon completion of the grant and the settlement of all associated financial obligations, the reserve account shall be closed. Do I have a mover?
So
Moved
moved.
by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Andrews. Discussion? Housekeeping, really. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, that takes us to council reports. Let's go around the table. Councillor next.
I thought my life was slowing down, but looking at this list, it really hasn't much. So last month, the street festival, we attended and we took part in actually, we're face painting. The Saturday of the street festival, we held our annual show and shine at the Heritage Museum. And then on the Sunday of that same weekend, we picked for the Firefighters Memorial Walk. We're quite honored that they asked us. The Toad River community had their track meeting on a weekend. I had a family wedding in Port St. John, so I did miss that one. Luann and Lisa went up though, so I'll attend the next one. I attended the NDIT info session that we had here in the Bear Pit. That was a great opportunity for any not-for-profit groups. So anybody missed out, they should really look for the information. It was great. We had their museum meeting. Pretty much the museum, they're getting ready for the winter. They're planning the AGM, which is November 26th. And then just recently, Krista, myself and Diana went down to Port St. John to the Northern BC Destination Development Strategy Workshop. It was a great day talking to everybody, you know, from all over the Peace River. And I think we all have kind of the same struggles. It was interesting really to see how similar we are to everybody else. The highlight was Gary Oker came from the Doig River First Nations, and he gave us an amazing overview and update on the Sequoia cave that they're I guess it's a
Charlie Lake.
yeah, the Charlie Lake cave. Much different when I was growing up because it wasn't like it is now. Yeah, it was a great, like I say, it was a great day. And then yesterday we did a walk of support for the Torville family. Logan was seriously hurt in a side-by-side accident on Friday, and he's currently in Children's Hospital in Vancouver. So if you all have extra pairs, feel free to send them to the Torville family. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I will talk about a few of the things that I've done over the last month. Then September 7th, Councillor Goering and I met with Fort Nelson Family Development in preparation for UBCM. It was a great meeting. Really opened my eyes with respect to the need in the community, and I think it helped prepare me for the meeting with the minister. September the 8th was the open house at the Literacy Society. I went over there for lunch and had a sandwich and a discussion with some of the things they're doing over there. September 8th and 9th, went to the street festival, which I thought was really good. The show and shine was awesome. September 10th, a remembrance walk with the fallen firefighters at the Gary Griffin Park. We gave a little bit of a speech there. September 15th, Northeast Regional Advisory Committee for NDIT, meeting that I chair for the Northeast region. For September 17th, 23rd, I was at UBCM. October 2nd, we did the reconciliation walk at Centennial Park for lost and survivors of the residential schools. October 4th, I did an interview with Daybreak North CBC on the shutdown of the RMC. So that's what I did the last 2 weeks. Busy month, actually, it was a month, I guess, it was a month since the last council. Okay.
Yeah, so I know it's late, but if you haven't read the letter, September 26th to Adrian Dix, please make sure that you read the letter because I think it is such a great letter. So just wanted to make sure that I express my compliments to everyone that was involved in writing that letter. So thank you so much.
Great job, staff. My job was pretty simple, just. Well, maybe I had an idea or two. Thank you. Okay, any other council reports? All right, 10.2 business outstanding. Welcome Fort Nelson Street Tunnel signs. Councilor, you next.
Oh, sorry. I had Logotech kind of put something together here a while ago. I know we were all in agreement that something should be done to celebrate our Streeper family. Entrance signs to either end of town. And Logotech put together, thanks, Jode, a 10 by 20 sign that we can get made up. We can change it. We can change the picture. The Streeper family have seen this. They're happy with anything we do. And I just like to see it get done sooner than later.
Where'd it go?
Either end of town, like by the Bears, like within our town. Either end. Entrances to Fort Nelson, like welcome to Fort Nelson, home of the world champions. So an example of what could be done. The cost is $2,200 each without the sign sitting on anything. The framing would have to be put up. And the stand.
So are you thinking about putting it on highway property or our own property?
No, our own property.
So
Like down by the water, down by the water by Tim Hortons, somewhere down there for coming in. And then just maybe out past 301. Just a welcome to Fort
Councilor Open.
Nelson, celebrating the Streepers.
Is that a double-sided sign? Will we see it both ways or is it facing one way each?
This
side?
would be just one way each. And rightly
guess,
so,
I
we
guess
could
you'd
put
want-
on
you'd
the
only want it
back,
on the
thanks
people
for
coming in.
visiting or something, right? So I just didn't want it to fall off the radar.
Yeah. I wonder, does it need to be on the highway? Like, could it be along the sidewalk that we haven't built yet between the museum and the park, RV park? Could it be on the sidewalk between Art Fraser Park and the museum?
Yes,
Could it be?
sure.
Could it be on the HME side?
Yeah.
Over towards the visitor information.
I just think
I'm
the
just thinking
entrance,
those are options. 'Cause
Yeah.
As soon as you want to put a sign like that in the highway right away.
right?
It complicates the heck. out
Yeah.
of it, right? Whereas if we're putting it someplace that people are walking by, but
Yeah.
also can drive by, but mainly on our own property.
Yeah. Well, the museum, right by the sidewalk of the museum.
I don't
All
want to
the
take away
trees,
from the
yeah.
museum either, but somewhere
No,
along there.
somewhere,
certainly-
yeah. by the
Certainly anybody
park
who
Yeah,
could pick up. Counselor Andrews?
By the visitor information center to the entrance of that parking lot there is a sign with some bigger imaging on it. Maybe something similar to that in a similar location or even update that signage. Yeah.
Counselor Roper?
So as far as the budget goes, we're looking at $2,200 per sign.
correct.
And so that's about $5,000.
Just for the
But just for the
sign.
So we have to erect some sort of structure.
Correct.
That might be the majority of the cost, depending.
And depending on what it's made out of, right?
So it's-
And being 10 by 20, it would have to be pretty sturdy
So
too,
we
with our
could-
winds that we got.
We could be looking at anywhere from 10 to 15, just a ballpark, something like that.
It would need to be engineered. Yeah. Whatever, because the wind load on 10 by 20 is huge.
I just think it's a great idea. I think it's a claim to fame that we have that we should really be proud of. It's just the logistics of getting it done, but I think that's a great job getting some quotes there. And a design, that's a great design, great photo. Yeah, I like it.
Okay. Can we look at some spots? Can we look at some sites that are on our own property, more or less in those areas, somewhere around the visitor information center, somewhere between the RV park and our Fraser Park? I think parallel to the highway as opposed to perpendicular to the highway. As soon as you go perpendicular, you're talking to highways and you complicate that. But
So you're looking for our spots, yeah, because big difference between if it's highway right of way and our own property. And then a lot of those areas, even if it has a road on it, maybe it's still within the highway right of way technically, right?
Yeah.
Depending on which side it is. And again, then some areas we don't necessarily own. License occupation for with free crown grant. So there's limitations that we can do. We can look at areas that are our own that would be, I guess, less restrictive when it comes to, because the minute we start dealing with Modi, we're dealing with permitting and
yeah, of course.
kinds of other stuff. So,
This is not something you do off the side of somebody's desk. I think that it's 10 by 20. It needs to be engineered. It needs to. Can we pull together a bit of an idea of potential sites and a cost to put? Yeah, 2024 budget. We've come way down from a pullout on the side of the highway.
I know, that's what I really want.
Yeah, which is, this is tens of thousands where that's
Yeah.
probably hundreds of thousands. So
2 to 4 million.
And then everybody's that's involved too. So, yeah. Thank you.
We'll need a resolution to prepare a report for budget.
So resolution to ask staff to prepare or
A report
a report
for budget.
for budget 2024 pertaining to the Streetbird.
Moved by
Welcome to
Councilor
4,000.
Enoch. The second
Second that.
by Councilor Roker. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. It's way better than 500,000. Thank you. Okay. Are there any notice of motions? Your notice of motion is taken care of? You're comfortable with that?
Yep.
John, yours has been taken care of with respect to, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any questions from the public or the media on the budget priorities or council business? Seeing none, 13's been looked after. We already did that. Adjournment is in order, 8:02. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilor Andrews, second by Councilor Gerwing. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.